Good morning. They seem very thin on the ground. I've just got to say it.
We do.
Where is everybody?
Well, Stephen is on his way. You know Stephen.
I know Stephen, yeah. Okay, we'll forget about him. Oh, very odd. Okay. I'm going to introduce Gavin, who is here to make sure we all behave ourselves. He's our legal chap today. We've only met as well. I don't know where Andrew is, but never mind. He's probably on holiday. Cool. What a great life. Apologies for absence. Got Theo, Mike, Jeremy, Susan, Laura, and I had an email from Richard this morning, and his dog is really very, very poorly. So he's at home waiting for vets and stuff. Very sad. But I don't think I've got enough apologies.
What's that for?
We are for it, yeah. Oh, here's Stephen. Okay, declarations of interest. I will go around the room. I don't have any. No. Bill? No. Anybody else their phone going? Has to give a donation at 10 quid to my favourite charity. Francis? No? No. Cara? No? No. Marcus? No. Haircut's very nice. Chairperson's announcement. I don't have any. And minutes of the last meeting, we need to approve the correct record of minutes of the meeting on the 2nd of June. Please can I have a proposer? John, thank you. Second by Mike. All those in favour? Brilliant, thank you. And we need to go through the minutes, and I will do that as I normally do. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Gosh, that was it. And it was all about going on to various committees. Not very exciting. Business of urgency, I don't have any, and public speaking, we have no members of the public here. But we do have 4 work experience students with us today. So we have honoured guests. So again, members, excellent behaviour for our honoured guests, please. And try and make it as interesting as possible. So I'm going to start with the corporate plan, which is interesting, and the Chief Executive is going to do it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Just wondering, Ellie, whether the honoured guests are able to actually see the screen, whether they want to move back a bit. They're happy. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a bit of an update on how we got on with the corporate plan last year. It's really a to-note report, but I think it's useful for you to just see the kind of overview of some of the work that's been going on and that many of you have been involved with. You'll remember back in May 2023, those of you that were here, we agreed a corporate strategy, which is a 3-year strategy, and underneath that, every year we agreed a series of actions, and then we closely monitor those actions and we feed back to you twice a year. So this is a kind of almost a bit of a summary of the 3 years, but really focusing on 25-26. And the recommendation is that we just note the content. So, sitting under the corporate strategy, so that's the overriding 3-year thing, we developed 6 areas of work, and you can read them on the screen, but they're about nature, climate, health and well-being, landscape, flourishing communities, and a new one for us, which was the focus on the estate. And that's been really apparent in our work over recent years, is how much energy has gone into our estate. And it's been very helpful that we've had the extra money from government through capital work has enabled us to invest more in the estate than we have done for many years. And finally, a great organisation to work for, reflecting all the work that Ellie and team do around making this a fantastic place to work. And as the report notes, this has all been set against a rapidly changing budgetary situation, which, as you know, we get an RDL cut, we get a CDL lump, and then we get an RDL lump. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster over the last year. So for the 2025-6 plan, we had 6 priorities again, and those are listed on the right, and I'm going to go through each of those briefly. So those are our kind of cross-cutting actions, And then below that there's a great long list of other actions which you can see in the report. And the green writing is where we believe we've pretty much nailed what we said we were going to do, and you'll see in amongst it there's a few oranges as well, which is where we didn't really achieve as much as we'd hoped, normally because of either circumstances outside our control or simply capacity of the team, because we were leading on one thing, we didn't have capacity for the other. So, the big thing last year was we adopted our new management plan, so that was our 5-year plan, and you'll remember we had that great launch event back in October over at Limber, with lots of partners turned up, and we had a lovely lunch. We set ourselves the task of working on the delivery plans now, so this year that's what we're focused on, so each area of the plan we're now looking at the detail of how we're going to deliver. The difference, I suppose, with this plan from other plans, much more target driven, and we have the thing that we affectionately call plot off, the Protected Landscapes Targets and Outcomes Framework, which is direction from government that sets very, very clear targets for us about areas of land that we have to restore for nature or trees that we have to plant and so on. So the next big piece of work was starting the lottery programme that we call Pioneers. So this is focused on the heart of Exmoor, on the forest, and it's about training people, skills, engagement in the future of that extraordinary piece of landscape. So we've got the staff team are now in place, and they've started work, lots of people engaged, lots of action, festivals and events. And it kind of overlaps and complements the landscape recovery bit that we're doing. So a lot of the work started through Pioneers, and Rob and team have been amazing at kind of juggling funding around. There's more pace and more people to be working on the forest. FIPL, we're all familiar now with FIPL, I think. It's been running for several years. We had about £500,000 last year. Small team, 3/4, 2 of them part-time, about 50 odd projects. And we thought it was the last year, so there was another rush to kind of get the money out the door and get things done. But we have now heard that we've got a new settlement, so we've got 3 years confirmed, which is really good news. That's over £1.5 million that will be going out into the farming and land management community for projects that deliver for nature, access, people and farm businesses. And there's been a really wide range of things, the sort of things you would expect, you know, sort of hedgelaying, ponds and tree planting and so on, but also workshops, events, farm schools, whole variety of events and activities. Strategy for income generation. So there's quite a few strategies when I was looking back. We agreed a number of strategies last year, and one of them was the income gen strategy. And Ben and team are now working, Ben and Dan particularly, Dan James, working on business plans across the estate. I would say the culture has changed from perhaps where we were 5 years ago, that we're always now thinking about how can we bring some money in, whatever it is that we're doing, how can we get sponsorship, how can we work with others, and you see that right across the organisation. So reviving Exmoor's heartlands. Oh my goodness, this has been a real slog. So this has been a 2-year development phase to put our land, along with 21 other farm businesses, into a landscape recovery scheme. It's been an enormous piece of work, and it's meant that we perhaps haven't done some of the other things that we would normally have been doing. And for example, you'll see in the paper the monitoring triple SIs, and that's changed direction a bit on that. So it's a huge piece of work, and we now know a lot more about the estate than we did 2 years ago. We've had a lot of consultants involved. We've been working with Savills, we've been working with green finance people, we've had people specialists working on sort of access improvements, and of course all of the out and about, I've not been so involved with, out on site, looking at our moorlands, looking at our woodlands and thinking, what's the future of this place? How do we make it more resilient? How do we make it better for capturing carbon, for storing water, but continuing to graze it and to, you know, produce really healthy food from the land? So, huge piece of work. We had a slight delay, but the project did go in end of May, I think. So we're now really waiting from DEFRA to see what they make of it. We're going to have a little update from Tom a bit later on driver, but this was another of our key cross-cutting actions. Plans will be coming to you, planning applications will be coming, we're hoping September. Couple of delays on that because of some of the consultee comments which we're just working through, but there has been huge progress. I mean, just looking at that aerial photograph, that big redundant falling to pieces agricultural building on the bottom photograph is now gone, and it looks very different. Lots of trees have been planted, there's been a huge number of events and activities up there, and it's great to see how many people have been up and are now talking about Driver and getting excited about Driver, planning for water bowls, planning for re-wetting, planning for a future landscape. We had a fantastic event there on Friday when people from all over the country came and looked at some of the meadows that have been created up there just in the last year or two. I think that the former tenant had done a good job in a way of not improving the land too much, so there's lots and lots of unimproved grassland which we're really starting to understand. All the plans have been drawn up for the house. We've got a project team which Tom Thurlow's obviously been very, very close to, and we've used external project consultants to kind of help us put that package together. Right, I'm moving on to the next section, which is our corporate priorities, and I think we've got 6 of these. So the first one was around the response to the nature and climate crisis. There's so much in there, I can't talk to you about all of it, but just picking out a few highlights, or perhaps the controversial highlights in the photograph. The White-tailed Eagle project began as a relatively straightforward working with Roy Dennis and turned into a really difficult, challenging project for us. I mean, we've invested a lot in it. It's been a huge effort with a huge number of people, with partners, and it's been quite tough on some of the staff, to be honest. Some of the issues that we've had with some of the response. The licence has been approved. The birds will be coming out later in the summer, and I think we've just got to keep the conversations going with the local communities, monitor what happens, work really closely with local people, because it has caused some concerns. I'm confident they're ill-founded, but it's good to see these kind of big, brave projects happening. Pine martins as well, they're now out and about in the park, being closely monitored. And then lots of other projects that you're already familiar with, like sowing the seeds, and some of the work we're doing around woodland creation, all supporting the plot-off targets. New one for us was the air quality monitoring. So this came out of some discussion, or some concern really, from Natural England, that atmospheric pollution was affecting the special areas of conservation. So the bryophytes and mosses were being affected by ammonia and nitrates in the air, which we didn't really understand where it was coming from. The view was that it was probably coming from farming, but we felt we didn't have enough data to kind of really understand the levels and where it was coming from. So there's been a project running now for a few months looking at air quality and trying to better understand. Okay, our second priority is about a welcoming place for all, health and well-being, and the guys there guys and girls on the left of your screen continue to do an incredible job managing our rights-of-way network, over 1,000 kilometres of rights-of-way, beautifully managed. I wouldn't want to be out there in this weather pairing footpath, but somebody has to, and they are, and they're just brilliant. So there's a real dynamism down at Field Services now. They're very engaged with our volunteers. They've got a tree nursery down there. They're working on lots of projects on the estate, and they're absolutely flying. So proud of them. We've also got things like our youth board, which we've started up with Sophie and team, Ben. So we've got some young people now getting engaged with the National Park. We've really pushed on volunteering. So the volunteering strategy you agreed back in the year, and work's going on that. And then some pictures there from the Nature Festival, and you'll be hearing a little bit about the active travel plan from Dan later. So lots happening on that side of the business. Landscape and heritage. It's interesting when you go back through the corporate plan and you can see there's perhaps not so much emphasis on this area as there is on nature, and that really is the direction we're getting from DEFRA. but we're doing everything we can, and we're doing a brilliant Dark Skies Festival again. That's been fantastic. Ashcombe Gardens, you will have seen bits and pieces about the work going on there, and if you get a chance, go and have a look, because the leat is now restored, the gardens are starting to come back to life. It's a really beautiful place to just go and have a little walk around and see what some of the volunteers have been doing and what we've been able to do with the extra CEDAR funding. Lucy's also been doing great work developing the HER and the pioneers kind of connection with our, the history and the heritage of people like Kimberley. So there's a lot going on there, but it's perhaps not getting the spotlight that some other areas are, which is something that Rob and I are going to think about. Okay, number 4. So this isn't our purpose, but our duty. So when we're furthering national park purposes, we have a duty to regard to the social and economic well-being of local people, and we do it in all sorts of ways. I think one of the best things we do is our regular Rural Enterprise Exmoor Days, which Dan James run. There's a picture there of Catherine from the Hill Farm Network talking about farming at that event. So that's about bringing the businesses together, all sorts of businesses, whether they're tourism, small operations, farm businesses, whatever, and kind of networking and just supporting and seeing where we can help. Started on the local plan review. That's going to be a big piece of work for next year, and we've been also working with a lot of businesses, kind of connecting with CareMore, so getting the businesses to work with us and where possible donate into CareMore. Okay, 2 more to go. Our estate. So as I said right at the beginning, we have taken a real deep dive, closer look at our estate, how we're running operations, and it cuts across everything. So it's about making it better for wildlife, making it store more water, making it store more carbon where we can, working with our tenants, making sure that they've got viable futures as well. And it's been a huge amount of work the last couple of years. We've also got the things like our North Hill campsite. We've got various buildings where we're trying to sort of generate more income and get them working. And again, there's always a tension between us making something more of our assets and being seen to support the local community and local economy rather than take from it. So that's something we're kind of monitoring quite closely. We've had a few foals, that's quite exciting, keeping the pony lines going. And the woodland team continue with all their fantastic work, managing over 600 hectares of woodland, looking at opportunities for new woodland creation. A few weeks ago, Andrea and I were down at the depot at Exford, completely blown away by the tree nursery, which is now looking absolutely fantastic. And again, it would be good perhaps if we could have a member visit down there, because it was looking really, really professional with all of the CEDAR money that's gone into that. We've also, our staff obviously are our greatest asset, our staff are members, and although we're really busy and we're rushing around doing all this work, we're mindful that we need to really support the team. And so Ellie has been doing a lot of work on the organisational development strategy. We've developed an EDI plan. So there's been a lot of work kind of going on behind the scenes, working with staff and supporting staff and trying to run, the odd event, the odd celebration to just say thank you to everybody. Okay. I'm now just going to briefly take you to the last few bits and pieces. So all of this has been collated by Ben and Judy, so thank you to them for doing this. And again, it's a huge amount of work collating all of this. And there's some really good graphs that I would draw your attention to. So as an organisation, almost every one of those graphs is going in the right direction. It's pretty impressive. So our climate action plan, greenhouse gas is going down, mileage is going down, building emissions down, compliments in planning up. I mean, that was a bit of a surprise to me. Really impressive, well done planning team. You don't see that very often. Areas where you know, we're not making huge progress, I would say, is rights of way, but our rights of way was exceptional. We were getting 95, 98%, and when we had the cuts, we had to move things around a bit. But we're still running well over 80%, which is really good. Planning targets there are really impressive. The only one I'm watching closely is that major one. We do need to make sure we get a major application through this year to keep our 50% above 50%. That's it. I'm sure there's some questions, but overall, stellar performance to the team. Really, really well done. Really proud. There's lots more to do next year, as you can see, but really pleased. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was incredible and lovely to have our annual update. Thank you. Members, Mike.
Thanks, Sarah. It's most impressive. Staff being a greatest asset. I did have a quick word with Ellie beforehand. Are we happy with the staff sickness record? Are there any underlying issues that we ought to be concerned about?
Would you like to pick that one up, Ellie? Yeah, please do.
I'm not overly concerned in terms of the sickness figures. Whilst short-term sickness or sickness has gone up, it's sort of the sickness that excludes long-term sickness, which is 20 days, has gone down. I think it's showing that our flexible working and hybrid working is supporting staff to be more at work. We've had some surgery, staff who has had surgery, and they've been able to get back to work a lot sooner. And we're also doing phased return to work for a couple of members of staff as well, which is supporting them to be in the workplace. And I think staff have been really grateful for that opportunity. So I do monitor the sickness forms as they come in. Every single one, so if I do see anything that raises alarm bells, then I will speak to the manager. But they have to do a return to work interview with their manager anyway, as you know, from any type of sickness absence. So I mean, there was a few like colds and flus as well. And people felt that they were better and came back to work, so completed a sickness form for that period of sickness, and then went off again with like a secondary infection or a further sort of infection following on from that. So then that sort of instigates another sickness period and another sickness form to complete. But generally, I'm not overly concerned.
Thank you. I think it would be very good if we could get the message out, I don't mean just here, but everywhere, about, it is so underrated in our society, about rest and recuperation. And I do think that this constant get you back and presenteeism doesn't help with that. I really do feel strongly about that, and about people I see that end up going ill again, and they're really quite poorly, and it just creates a terrible culture. So I think if we can just keep promoting rest and recuperation, which helps with the hybrid working, because it, you know, obviously it's a bit easier, isn't it? You can keep your pyjama bottoms on and have a hot drink. And I'm not saying anything that nobody else in the room has done. We've all done it. But you know, you're all smiling.
Speak for yourself.
I think you go to bed dressed like that.
That's what stands.
Generally, I try and sort of encourage managers to take the lead from staff rather than tell them what they need to do. It's more about that conversation and getting the right balance for all of us. So
I'll be instigating a sort of convalescent home for exploration. Right, who was next?
Sorry, Chair, I just want to add, I just think it's important that staff realise as well that all their work is appreciated by members, because it really is. And I think the last event that took place last month was a good example of that, and that should be continued. Thank you.
Yeah, so what we intend to do, going on that subject, although I'm going off the subject here, we intend to have some of the speakers in that we had to our forum meeting, which they were very good. There weren't many of us here. It'll be, there weren't many public here either, but they were so good, we decided that we'd do that, have a sort of lunchtime drop-in for members and staff, so that they can highlight what they do, and we hear from them what they do, which is much better than us sitting here in quite a dry atmosphere. I don't think you're next, Robin, sorry.
No, but I was just going to add to that.
Well,
It was only to add to that, following the forum, I was told a couple of days ago that one of the people that attended the forum was that impressed with our education team that he has gone out and arranged sponsorship for the likes of boots and coats and so on for the children that are likely to be covered. And that was the net result of one person that attended that and listened and was that impressed with the presentation. So we mustn't underestimate some of that at all.
no, it was very good. Right, sorry, who would really catch my eye now, or the Deputy Chairman? Who had their hand? Andrew.
I've only just put that on.
Oh, right.
I'll go for that. Thank you much, Sarah. A lot of good stuff, and then obviously overall generally good progress, I think, in delivering that. Few questions actually. In terms of monitoring against the priorities, you've got 6 priorities, which we've sort of got what we've achieved. Do you have a sort of dashboard of how well you're doing against achieving those priorities overall? I mean, do you think, so we can say you finished activities, but in terms of the outcome of achieving those priorities, how well do you feel about those? And do you think that's going to become more important under the management plan when there's more target driven? So I just wonder if there's any other way of monitoring there. That's sort of a high level. And it's great to hear the involvement in the Reviving Exmouth Heartland to help us learn more about our estate. So it's interesting we're getting paid by someone else to learn more about our estate, which I think is great, which is ideal. If that goes ahead, obviously great. If it doesn't go ahead, are there going to be gaps in what we can deliver against our priorities? I'm sure you've got a plan there, or is it too early to talk about that yet?
No.
And then going back to the sort of 3 areas, rights of way, planning and national park centres. Great to see planning doing so well. The rights of way obviously dipped off, we've had the storm. Do you see that flattening off, improving, or I guess it could depend on another storm coming? The national park centres, I'll come on to that when Ben presents his piece. There's a mixed message there, and I think Ben will perhaps pick that up later. But so overall monitoring, Reviving Exmouth Heartlands, and the rights of way.
Okay, so on overall monitoring, the Appendix 2 sets out the things that we do measure. We also have to obviously measure the plot of targets, so that's through the management plan. In terms of do we have a dashboard against the sort of 50-odd targets? No, not really. We do it in a quantitative way, so it's an assessment of how well we're getting on. So we are measuring some of the things that we can measure. But you make a very good point, because it's often easy to measure the things you can measure, because they've got numbers attached, and you end up sometimes measuring things because you can measure them. So I think it's always got to be a balance between qualitative and quantitative data when we're doing these things, and a kind of overall feel from all of us and you about how things are going. So, sorry, I don't know if that answers your question enough, but no, we don't have a dashboard against everything. Heartlands, what if we don't get REH? Okay, well, we will get an indication fairly soon. I mean, the only other real show in town is obviously countryside stewardship. So it will then be about, okay, what have we learnt from REH? What is there in CS that we could perhaps move across? Lots of conversations with tenants about how they feel about that and how that's going to go. So we haven't sort of rushed in to say what plan B is, but we are kind of thinking a little bit about plan B in the background in case, obviously. And then you've got all the issues about rollover and making sure that we don't lose out an annual payment or something because we've dropped out of one thing and into the other. So I don't know if Rob, if you want to add anything on that.
Just CEDAW gives us the option.
CEDAW.
Okay.
Sorry, the third one.
The rights of way, do you think that's a temporary dip, or that just depends on the future storm?
Well, it's always dependent on storms, floods, snow. We might even get snow again. I can't see us imminently getting back to the kind of high 90% because we just don't have the capacity of people working on it because they're doing so much more on the estate. Would you agree, Rob?
Funded, yeah.
And funded work, yeah.
Right, yes.
they have income targets now. Because of funding cuts, they've had income targets. So we've got rights of way to deliver income generating work. So that's why you're seeing a lower standard.
Okay. So if we're happy where we are, then that seems fair enough, doesn't it?
Well, I'd love it if it was 100%, but it's always a balance between, you know,
Yes.
what you do, and our plot-off target doesn't say 100% rights of way open and easy to use. In fact, there's very little in there about access, which is a shame. But for us as an organisation, our rights of way are really, really important.
Yes.
So they'll always be up there. They'll always be a priority, but we can't throw everything at it.
My experience of rights away are very good. What I see.
They're very good.
From
Yeah.
mountain biking, horse riding, and walking.
Yeah.
Lee?
Thanks, Chair, and I echo everything everybody said, and thank you for an excellent report and a real great presentation. I want to applaud from personal experience as well the Pinkery Centre, because I think it's a fantastic achievement to have an increase of visitors, if you like, or stayers to what looks like to be about 20% year on year, which is fantastic. And I can speak from personal experience. I went there with a group of about 8 lads in March. We had a cracking time. The facility is excellent and really underrated. It really is. And I'm not surprised to see that jump, and I just would sort of challenge, is there anything more we can be doing as a park to advertise that gem of a facility, that sort of hidden star really, that we can even generate more income and get more occupancy through the door, because it really is a fantastic facility. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. It's pretty much full. So we get a huge number of repeat visitors there, so the schools come back again and again and again. So we don't really struggle too much with occupancy, and they do need a little bit of downtime to tidy up, paint up, do the jobs that need doing. Going forward, you'll have seen in the current plan that we're starting to develop some ideas to make it even better. I know it's fantastic, but I think we can make it even better. We can make it more sustainable, we can make it a better building, we can conserve some of the beautiful old historic fabric and create something alongside it that's a bit more of its time, better insulated, better. And this is something that I've been really keen to do for a very long time, so I'm quite excited that we're going to start on that project this year. And it will be involving all the members in the discussion about the scoping for that. Should it be bigger? Should we be trying to get more bed space in there? That's all up for discussion. But no, great question, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
I look forward to that. Stephen, you were next.
Like other speakers, obviously overall I entirely commend and thank the Chief Executive for the report. However, there was just one thing I'm very conscious of. You mentioned income generation and showed the picture of the coffee van, and you also mentioned supporting the local economy and the tensions that there are sometimes there. And I think I do have to register the fact that that particular item is still causing huge resentment, which is expressed to me on a regular basis in Simmonsbath.
Okay.
I don't want to introduce a slightly more dismal element into this excellent report from you this morning, but there are still tensions, there are still issues that we as a park have to be extremely sensitive to, and whilst it might be hitting one particular target to be doing something, the coincidental damage can actually be very long lasting and can be a continual sore for a very long time, which will then have impact on other aspects of what we try to do. So just that one issue, I think it's worth noting this morning and just saying, whilst the garden is blooming beautifully, there are the few weeds here and there that still need to be kept a close eye upon.
Thank you, Stephen, and I'm very, very aware of this one. I was talking to people at the weekend about it, and I think we've done everything we possibly could to ensure that it doesn't impact on local businesses. Nonetheless, there is a perception that it is, and we need to deal with that. And I think sometimes, you know, we can feel that we're right and somebody else is wrong, but we've still got to listen to the wrong and we've got to respond to it and be seen to be doing the right thing. I mean, all we're trying to do is create a business opportunity, but it's obviously impacting on the feelings of people in that village and how they run their businesses. So I will be talking to Dan and seeing if there's something we can do about ensuring that the coffee van is in a more remote location.
It's very kind that Mr Pugsley come back in,
Well,
because he took it very well
Yes.
to comment about his pyjamas.
very nice pyjamas too. I think the key point, without labouring it too much,
Yeah.
and as you say, a lot of it may be about perception, but the resident businesses that have to pay business
Yeah.
rates and the expenses of maintaining a property feel that the competition of a van that rolls up and rolls away again and doesn't have any of those charges is inherently unfair. That's the key problem, I think. It's not just competition.
Yeah. I think, if I may, what we tried to do was strike a balance with using the Sunday because the other cafe was closed on the Sunday, so we felt that was okay. I think probably just a little bit of, there's a bit of nuance in the whole thing, but I'll take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Bill? Very patient.
Thank you. You mentioned white-tailed eagles, one of my favourite subjects.
Put that especially to you.
And the cost. Is the WTE equipment under capital spend, is that white-tailed eagles?
It is.
So the total amount, I think, is about short of £90,000 if we spent. Are Roy Dennis putting any money into this thing or not? Because I don't think when we decided to do this, we thought it was going to cost £100,000 to put up some pens and some release pens and get the eagles here. But that seems a huge amount of money. And an awful lot of that seems to be capitalised staff costs as well. So I just wondered if you could just talk a little bit more about that, please.
I can't talk about the detail. I mean, I know it's a partnership project. Forestry Commission will have put a lot of money in. Roy Dennis will have put money in. We have put some money in. Probably a little more than we'd anticipated right at the beginning, but a lot of that is staff time, and it is a fantastic project. I mean, these species reintroduction things are very expensive, but if they work, they really deliver for the long term. I can come back to you with some detail about the overall cost. I certainly don't have it to hand. I don't know if you do, Rob, or anybody. No. I'm not sure we've ever even seen the overall budget, but I'll have to come back to you. Claire's actually out with DEFRA at the moment talking about species reintroduction, so she'd be the expert.
It's a good example of where it would have been good to have an overall budget before we started and knew what our contribution was expected to be. It seems that it could become more open-ended. I mean, it's not finished yet, is it? So how are we involved going forward? Are we going to be part of the monitoring and the education side?
Monitoring will be Roy Dennis. We will obviously be involved with some landowner liaison because our ranger team have been really helpful throughout. But we don't have any commitments going forward, do we, financially? Don't think on WTU. Not at the moment. No, we haven't been asked for any more money for the programme, have we?
Okay. Can I just to ask final point? There was talk of a board or a body that's going to sort of monitor it.
Yes.
Has that been set up? Is it being advertised, or how is that going to work?
It's in the process of being set up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chief Executive, do you think at the next members forum
Update?
we could have an update on this? It won't be till September, but I mean that would be helpful, I think. Is that okay? Bill, I'm going to be very kind.
Okay, but just to finish on that then, would it be possible to get somebody from the project to come and speak and tell us where we are? Because it's been going a long time. It's grown like topsy. It'd be interesting to know, what the outcome is going to be or what the proposed outcome is. If it was possible to get somebody from the project here, that'd be good.
Sure, that's possible.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Oh.
Very patient.
Thank you very much. You mentioned in your presentation about SSSI monitoring and said you were going to come back to it, but I don't recall you coming back to it, and I'm taken by paragraph 24, which says that you're progressing a state strategy with a focus on baseline surveys and management plans, and there's orange text underneath that says that changes in DEFRA requirements, what a surprise, for the development of landscape schemes means that the thing has been focused. What I wasn't sure about was what role the National Park had actually in monitoring SSSIs, because I thought that was down to Natural England, although we know they have capacity issues. And what's said in the red and what you were planning to do under the priority action seem to be broadly the same, so that the work under the landscape recovery schemes requires detailed survey activity, evidence gathering and management planning, whereas actual fact the focus on completing baseline surveys and management plans seems to be broadly the same. So I suppose what I'm trying to establish is, to what extent have you had to sort of concentrate your work away from areas that were planned to deliver in specific areas, and to what extent has that caused a problem, and how well positioned are you to catch up in the next couple of years?
Thank you. Again, Claire would be able to answer this better than I can, but I'll give it a go. Essentially, we were going to be working with Natural England to do monitoring of SSSIs. We're wildly behind. You know, some of them haven't been surveyed for 10 or even 20 years.
Yes, I know.
So our plan was to use some of our team to help with some of that monitoring. As it transpired, as we developed the landscape recovery scheme, there were more and more requirements for DEFRA about very detailed surveys of the whole area, not just SSSIs, all of it. It's not all SSSIs. And so all of the effort had to go into that. So a lot of baseline surveys right across the park, which is great. But it's different, as you know, from SSSI monitoring, which is about the key characteristics of species, whatever, the habitat. So they're slightly different things, interrelated but different. So the SSSI monitoring, will be happening. And I don't know if we've got any updates from any, but perhaps again that's when I come back to where are we with SSSI monitoring. Do you have anything to add, Rob?
Well, the only thing I would add, which is one of the targets as well, is for our estate as a whole, we've identified the need for high-level management statements. So outside of anything we do in terms of SSSIs or designated sites. So it might surprise you, but for all of our assets, we don't have a high-level objectives set and explicit. So we said we were going to do that as a priority for our estate. Because of the landscape recovery schemes, that's taken all the resource. So we literally, in the last month or two, began work on those management statements again. So that was completely interrupted. We just got started on it. LRS came along, we deflected onto that. So we're now back onto the management statements. So these are high-level statements which make it clear to the organisation and to external partners what we see as the priorities there.
May I come in?
Yeah, please do.
I mean, I do recognise the tension here, because, of course, the SSSIs were all established pretty much by the mid to late 90s under a specific set of criteria for specific interests. Now, and the monitoring programme went on top of that, and I suspect would have, up until about the 2010s, shown a gradual decline in interest. What's come in since then, since Natural England was established, has been a different set of schemes to deliver nature conservation. And actually you've got quite a tension between the sites that are designated on the ground and not being looked after, and you have objectives of the new schemes coming in which are not necessarily, I think, directly related to what was on the ground in the first place, because there's much more of a landscape focus rather than a habitat and species focus. I may be slightly wrong, so I've been out of the business for over 10 years now, but I think this is something that needs some sort of fairly clear examination. Otherwise, you're always going to be confused about what you're trying to do in trying to sort of manage the SSSI for the reasons it was designated in the first place, or you're trying to deliver the latest DEFRA scheme with all the bells and whistles and the money.
Can I come back? And in addition, I think there's a lot of challenge around the SSSI condition in that when it was designated, exactly as you say, in the 1980s or whatever, it's moved on. We've got a different climate, we've got different agricultural practices. You can't, a lot of it was about restoring vast areas of heather moorland for a certain suite of species. Well, that's probably not, that's never going to happen. Are we actually going to, restore some of those areas to something that was there in the 1970s? or is it kind of moving on to something that's going to be there in the 2050s? And that's a big debate that's going on. So,
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. And agree with everybody else. I quite enjoyed reading this, and it's quite comprehensive. And I'd just like to endorse what Stephen says. I think I'm on record over many, many years of very similar things about a level playing field when it comes to what Stephen was talking about. And but mine, I think one thing you pointed out, and I noticed you said, I think you used the words a viable future for our tenants, and then that maybe start thinking about a viable future for people who aren't just tenants as well. Because it was great news, you talk about the planning improvements. I think I've banged on in another place for many a time about how the delays in planning cost people, cost individuals money, cost the economy money, cost generally the whole of Somerset money, because you know things aren't happening because they're not getting through the system. And so that's really good news that that's, you know, it's improving here and that isn't an issue as much here. But for me, that then brought me down, and this is how my mind works, is that suddenly, and I think this point about a bit about prepare for the review of the local plan. Well, if we're talking about the economy, surely everything ends up being central about that review to the local plan, because that helps shape the park and how it works with the park purposes in the future. And I just wondered, how do we ensure that there's enough input from others in the local plan, so it isn't just us officers, members sat in here having a chat, thinking about the local plan, and we make sure that we get the views of the residents, businesses, even planning agents, things like that, people who actually have to deal with how the actual implementation of the local plan works. Because again, consistencies and inconsistencies are not necessarily in the park, but maybe elsewhere, where you know suddenly things aren't happening because of you know how conservative, maybe that's the wrong word, one particular officer might be over another, or how there's a who oversees those individual decisions apart from the members. Because of course, going forward, if you have a government that wants less and less things to go to committee, well, a lot of people will think that's good because it's not going to be a planning committee deciding it. But actually, some people can work the other way around, where things might get refused that a committee may have approved. So it's how we fit all that into going forward into the
So I
future.
think I can answer this. So last month we had, I don't think you were here, we had, we did have a time, well, I don't know if Sarah was actually in the room when we had our timeline. The timeline was given to us, did we not? And I haven't got it with me, but Stephen will undoubtedly have it in one of his pockets, in his jacket. But there is
I didn't come here to be
consultation.
defended. I think the answer is that to Marcus's question is that part of it will be statutory, so there will be things that we will have to do. But the park does have a good tradition actually of making sure that the public consultation is very thorough, so that all of our communities will have the opportunity to engage, and that isn't just the physical ones, but it's communities of interest as well within the process. And we know that we're going to have to be really getting this thoroughly underway really by the end of this year, so it's now rapidly approaching. But I think, as I say, the culture here has always been to involve as wide a cross-section of the community as possible in formulating the local plan, partly because if it's going to work properly, it needs to have that wider support. So I think I would feel confident that that will happen. But Marcus is right that we need to be very conscious of it and to make sure that we produce a plan that really is fit for the future, because we operate under a plan-led system. However much we congratulate ourselves and our staff quite rightly for making sure that we're hitting all of our targets, the bedrock of everything that we do in planning is the plan. And we have to make sure that it is right and absolutely fit for purpose and fit for the next period.
Claire, can you you ask Ruth to send the timeline? Actually, it's changed slightly from when we had the meeting.
Yes,
It was
yes.
going to be January, isn't it? And it's now going to be December.
Yeah.
So if you could get asked Ruth to send the updated times to Marcus, please, and then we'll see when we can. There's a lot of conversation here. I've got Robin, then you, Marcus. Robin.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Selection of bits I've got here. I think, first of all, looking at this report, first of all, commend the report. And secondly, I think, can't highlight enough, actually, the contribution that staff have given here. Because there's a reality in that funding has changed over the last couple of years. There's been an awful lot more money being able to be thrown at projects, but with effectively the same staff resource. And those staff have been putting it under increasing pressure. And I think just to recognise that and recognise why sometimes, in my mind, some things that we would like to have seen addressed a lot more closely have not been. They're just not possible to do so much more without some more longer term planning. The funding's become a lot more realistic. It would be quite nice instead of on a year-on-year additional basis, that was something longer term that we could plan for properly. So just to highlight that to start with, I mean, and particularly I think around the education and outreach team, the comments I've had from people following the members' forum bit where they presented here has been phenomenal. And also got to pay tribute realistically to the other people that hit the front line quite hard, and that's the planning team. And the fact there's actually compliments within the report for them is appreciated and testament to the way in which Joe is leading that team. So I think that needs to be noted. However, having said that, just a couple of things I'd like to bring up really. First of all, I think corporate priority 3, care for landscape and heritage. Sometimes, I'd just like to ask, could it be potentially seen that this is slightly at odds with our base national park designation? Because it appears that we are focusing very specifically on what's happening right there. But actually the designation was very, very much about the wider landscape, wasn't it, to start with? So just how we've linked those things. Around corporate priority 4, our duty was reinforced relatively recently, and I think it's been brought up by other members as well. There's a distinct feeling out there in the Exmoor community that there isn't enough emphasis on our duty as opposed to our primary Part 2 purposes, in that several businesses are feeling, what about us? What is there to support a long-term business that will exist within the national park and ensure it can be profitable, vibrant and can contribute long-term to national park purposes? So there are those there are one or two of those antagonisms that I'm tending to feel that we're seeing within it in pursuit of a corporate plan. And I think we have to recognise them. And I think sometimes we get everything down that we do right, how great. I think sometimes we could do ourselves a great service by admitting sometimes where we feel the direction of travel may or not have delivered what we expected, and that there's opportunity for change. We've done an awful lot with our own assets, and that's highlighted here, but is there a danger that we're becoming a little more introvert within our activities and focusing an awful lot of staff time on better managing our own assets and not linking directly with the wider community and the assets outside, as well as we could do and have done as well. The climate action priorities, which we've achieved really well, but I think it's just a comment from me. How much of this is based on the fact we've had significant grants to be able to help achieve them? Are they sustainable in the long term? Be the question that goes alongside that one. And I think that's probably it. I said are we a little light on priority 4? And although some of the comments I've made around being introvert, focusing our own, in reality, we have to remember that we seriously undervalued our own asset in the past. And actually, effectively, in some cases, we've virtually abandoned it. And I think you could appreciate that when you go to Driver and look at what we ended up taking over because we've done nothing to it or not directly been involved in it for so long. So how do we ensure that we safeguard, again, in the longer term against that with all our remaining assets, and are we doing so effectively at the moment? I think it's enough. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Quite a lot in there. Right, okay, from the top. So the landscape and heritage, it's very clear when you look at the plot of targets and the statements coming out of DEFRA that it is about greener, wilder national parks. And we are in a biodiversity and a climate crisis, and we have to respond to that. Nonetheless, please be reassured there are enough people in this building who are absolutely passionate about landscape and heritage, and we're doing a huge amount. I mean, you look at some of the work Tom Thurlow's doing on historic buildings, Lucy's doing, Rob and team are doing through Pioneers. There's still a huge amount going on. It's perhaps not getting pumped out through Instagram as much as some of the biodiversity stuff, but I just want to reassure you that we're not going to let that one drop. It's something that we're already passionate about. Duty, yeah. So as an organisation, we have to further national park purposes, and in doing so, we have a duty to have regard to the social and economic well-being of local people. That doesn't mean it's a separate duty, and you all know this, but I think there's often a bit of confusion that we have this separate duty to further. We don't. We have a duty to have regard while we're furthering our purposes. It's all interconnected and interrelated, isn't it? And absolutely, we can't do our job, we can't work here, we can't have a beautiful landscape and environment if we don't have people living and working and thriving and working with us. And I think what's hard for us is we're going through this kind of transition as we come out of Europe and CAP, we're now 10 years, I think, nearly, aren't we? And the farming community is having to adapt and change and transition, perhaps with a lack of clarity from the top about what is wanted. It's taken quite a long time for us to get to the farming roadmap, to get to the land use framework, to get some of the sort of policy in place that is setting us in that direction, and we're trying to work through all of that. I would say we have done a lot. I mean, we've administered FIPL. That's been $500,000 a year going into farm businesses. A lot of the programs we run are about training and apprenticeships and that kind of thing. We've had, people like Three Atop at the Sawmill, great business that we've been able to sort of support and work with over the last 5 years, and we're seeing them really flourishing. So, yes, I would love it if we could do more, Robin, but I think, we've been so stretched, we have been cut. It's really clear where our capital has to go. It has to go into projects that deliver for nature or for access. They haven't given us a pot to spend on local businesses. So, what was the next one? Oh, the introvert. Yeah, we probably have been a little bit. I think we have refocused on the estate because we absolutely needed to, because it had been a bit ignored for quite a long time. And I think, some things were slightly thrown at us. We didn't know that our tenant was going to leave Driver when he did, so we had to do something. But I think in a way we've also turned things around and we've made our estate more open. We've invited people in. We've said, come and run a business on our estate, come and do something with us. I mean, you look at the shop in the town, for example, is very much about welcoming other businesses into our building and creating those opportunities. Climate. I think on that one, a lot of money has been spent, but it's investment that's been needed. So it's the electric cars, which has meant that we can drive down our emissions. It's solar panels on roofs, which means that we've got long-term, we're not reliant on, gas and non-renewable energy supplies. So it's investment for the long term. So, you don't always need a grant every year. You just need a dollop of money, every now and again to invest in those things. Yeah. Does anybody want to add anything?
I think that's it.
I'd like to just emphasise the low base that the estate was at, and if there's an accusation of being introvert, we've put a huge amount of focus. Started in 2017, but since COVID we've put a huge focus on our estate, but we jolly well needed to because it was at such a low baseline. But on that journey, if you just take somewhere like Forest, we've put together a landscape recovery scheme programme with 21 other participants. So we haven't just gone out there on our own and been introverted. We've been absolutely engaged with other, with our neighbours effectively, which is what we said we'd do in the strategy. So it's a very effective way of taking our estate forward and bringing other people with us. And as Sarah said, our tenants that we work with very closely now. So it's redefining some of those relationships, but it's absolutely working in partnership, which is what we should be doing. So it's not introvert. That would be one
Thank you. And lastly, Francis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Everybody said all the things about our staff, which I totally endorse. As far as leadership is concerned, it is very difficult working on the annual funding that you don't know whether it's. I'm aware of it. I don't know what things are now, but I'm aware in another place that there was a stage when more than 50% of the budget of that authority was annual funding, which might or might not be repeated. It's no way to run a business, and it's very, very stressful. So a lot of sympathy and a lot of support over that. Everybody else has said almost everything that needs to be said, so I'm not going to repeat any of it. I am going to say one thing back to the consultation on the local plan and the development of the local plan. In order to consult, you have to have something in front of people to consult on. You can't. It's no good going out and saying, what would you like? So what we have to do first is develop what we believe is the strongest and best thing, and then ask for other people's views and other people's ideas and input. And so I know that everything has to run quickly, but I am interested in how much we are going to be able to look at other protected landscapes and other areas which may or may not be protected landscape of sparsely populated rurality, and see what they are doing and how they are doing it. Because, as we've all said, we can only have an more special place if we have the people to keep it that way. And the numbers of the numbers of people, the numbers of families are. We know there's a national drop in birth rate. It's very exaggerated in sparsely populated areas. It is particularly exaggerated here. And I hope before we get out to consultation, we will have been able to look at, is there anywhere that is doing things differently, that's making a difference, that's helping, before we decide that we've spent all our local plans trying to support local people living here. They're not working. All that we try to do is the right thing, it has the right aim, but we're not getting there. Is there anybody, is this just something that we have to accept, or is there anybody who has thought differently, and is there anything we can learn? And that has to be, I think, before we get forest consulting.
Any comment there, Chief Executive?
No, it's a really, really good point, and it's probably one to have a wider discussion on going forward, and bringing members in their thoughts, where have they been, where have they seen other things happening. We are bolstering the local plan team, sort of as we speak. We are advertising, have advertised, not yet, about to advertise. No, I agree, Francis. It's yeah.
Numbers of children in years at school is frightening. I'm
Thank
not
you.
going to produce them now.
I've made a note. I'll speak with Ruth.
Okay, thank you. I have no more hands unless there's anybody I didn't notice. No? So we've been asked to note the progress in implementing the authority's key commitments in the corporate plan 25-26. I'm going to add to that we also note that the capacity issues are impacting on the delivery. Because if you look at each of those amber points, it's all about capacity. I think we need to note that. And I'm just going to say this: we ain't going to be doing any more without you haven't got the people to do it. So we need to be very careful what we're asking for people to do. So as long as everybody's happy now, I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Can I have a second, please? Thank you, Manager. All those in favour? Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? Nick?
Sorry, no.
You know you're not abstaining, or yes, you're voting?
Yes, I'm voting.
That was unanimous. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, positive.
So moving on to item 8, and it's the outturn. This is where our young people get very excited, I'm sure. Ben's going to make it super exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'll do my best. The Chairman always has great delight in our financial information. So, good morning. This is really an underpinning report based on all that Sarah has just been discussing with you and presenting to you. And the report covers 4 linked areas. Sorry, I haven't got a presentation. I'm just going to put this on in the background. So the report covers 4 linked areas. So the final outturn position on our finances for 25-26 financial year, the authority's reserve position as at 31st of March 2026, early budget monitoring for the first 2 periods of 2026-27 financial year, and an update on our medium-term financial plan. So I'm going to focus on the key headlines. I'm not going to repeat any of the details, because there's quite a lot which is contained in that report, and we've already gone through quite a lengthy document as well. Historically, we would have brought our statement of accounts to this juncture as well. I can confirm that we completed and published our statement of accounts on the 30th of June, statutory deadline, but unfortunately it was too late for the paper set for this meeting, so that will be brought to you in September as we did in 2024-25. So my first headline to you this morning is that the authority delivered a balanced financial outcome despite an exceptionally difficult financial year. So members will recall back last March, April, shortly after the budget was approved, DEFRA reduced our National Park grant by 8.2%, and that removed around £265,000 of core funding. At the same time, we faced continuing inflationary pressures. The first full year operating under the business review structure that we've already discussed, the impact on the rights of way, the impact on national park centres, and very many areas of our business where we kind of shaved £500,000 off our running costs. We've incurred significant legal costs regarding a long-standing case. We've got the challenge of delivering a much larger capital programme than we have historically managed. That 1.4 million of CEDAW, capital departmental expenditure limit funding that DEFRA provided, we historically have only had a £200,000 to £300,000 capital programme per year. So it's a vastly different ball game. So despite those pressures, our relatively careful budget management, strong external income, we've had very good interest earnings over the last couple of years. It's meant that after excluding specific accounting adjustments, the authority generated an underlying management surplus of just over £10,000. And that's allowed us to increase the general fund balance during the year rather than draw upon it. So the second key headline is that the reported deficit in the papers is largely an accounting treatment rather than operational overspending. So really, as members, I want you to distinguish between the reported statutory position and the underlying operational position there. So the accounts show a deficit of approximately £140,000 after reserve movements. However, this includes a kind of statutory capital accounting thing called REFGUS, revenue expenses funded from capital under statute, for £150,000 in terms of a revenue grant that was awarded. Sorry, not a revenue grant, a capital grant that was awarded. And under the CIPFA code, this must be charged through revenue, even though it's effectively capital support rather than operational cost. So once that accounting treatment is removed, the authority's underlying position is a small surplus rather than deficit. And I think that's probably the most important message members can take from the revenue outturn. The third point is that external income continues to be a major strength. We continue to extract substantial external funding. We've had our income strategy approved, and we're working on that in terms of developing business plans to enhance every area of our undertaking, our estate and our operations. So during the year we delivered
just over £500,000 through the Farming Protected Landscape Scheme, with no underspend on that, so that's fully allocated. Around about £250,000 for landscape recovery. Over £400,000 through countryside stewardship, and that's across our estates, but also our woodlands as well. And £85,000 through Pioneers, the Pioneers project, as well as additional biodiversity and species recovery funding from external partners. And this external funding underpins a very significant proportion of our work. It's become increasingly important given the pressure on core funding. And yes, our revenue grant, going to Francis' previous comment, is around about 50% of our revenue
No way
income.
to run a business.
No, it's a difficult one. And my fourth key headline is that it's been an exceptional year for capital investment. It's the largest capital programme this authority has ever undertaken and delivered in many years. It's on par with the Limerick Pavilion of 2012-2013. That's probably the most recent sizable investment that we've had. So we delivered over 1.45 million of capital investment, and around about 1.4 million of that came from the CDL capital grant from DEFRA, the remainder from our own internal resources. And that investment covered three broad areas: nature recovery, habitat creations, estate and visitor infrastructure, and operational equipment and digital transformation. So that programme has enabled us to invest in assets and infrastructure that otherwise would have taken many years to deliver through our normal funding system. It's that investor save element. It's hugely beneficial to us. So I would like to place on record my thanks to colleagues across the authority who have helped deliver, develop, monitor and account for a programme of that scale. And yes, it has had an impact, as I have mentioned in previous meetings, on our staff base and our resource there. And the fifth key message is that our reserves remain strong and purposeful. So total reserves reduced from approximately 4 million to around about 3.7 million last year. That reflects the planned use of reserves to support delivery of projects throughout that year. And importantly, we budgeted for that. This reduction was expected, largely reflects our investments in priority projects, supporting the CDL, and it's not a deterioration in our financial position. So our general fund balance now stands at approximately £240,000, and when combined with the general fund contingency, we have around £592,000 of unallocated financial resilience. So that as kind of working kind of capital is sufficient. And as Chief Finance Officer, I remain satisfied that reserves are adequate for the purposes of Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003. So I'm satisfied that our reserve base is sufficient for the organisation of our size and operations. Our early signs for 2026 and 2027 are encouraging. So turning briefly to the current year, our month two position, although it appears significantly adverse on paper, most of that variation relates to timing. So the time the report was prepared, and even now, our major grant receipts, including around about £742,000 of National Park grants, £113,000 of civil funding have not been received. Now there's ongoing discussion with DEFRA and the DEFRA commercial team about grant agreements, and we're hoping that's going to be resolved this week. But actually by this time of year we would have had 50% of our National Park grants in, including the capital element, and that is going to have an interest impact on our 26-27 position. Around about £2.5 million, £3 million should have been received during this first 6 months of the year, and or first 3 months and start of July. So that is really going to impact on our interest budget for the year. But that situation does look to be resolving itself with DEFRA now. The current and the authority continues to face uncertainty around future National Park grant settlements. We've got a 3-year continuity here. We've got indicative sums provided to us. The revenue element of our National Park grant around about 2.9 million. That is going to be flatlined over the next 2 years at best. So where we'd hope for some sort of inflationary increase, our core 50% of our income is going to be flatlined. And you overlay that with our current external pressures, our staffing costs. A 3% pay award on that is around about £100,000 a year. So our medium-term financial plan projected budget gaps for 27-28 of around 67,000 and about 136,000 the following year. So we are continually having to look at our budget to adjust, to look at how we deliver, to ensure that we remain a viable organisation, that we continue to deliver all that we've seen in the corporate plan messages this morning. So those gaps are manageable, but they demonstrate that continued cost control is essential. Income generation, external funding are essential. And it's likely that revenue elements will continue as it currently is forecast. So Chairman, and members, to conclude, 25-26 was a significant year of change for the authority, especially in our funding. We've been flatlined for a number of years, small increase in 24-25, but this year was a topsy-turvy world really, where we had our revenue grants reduced, capital allocation given very late on. I have to say we've absorbed that substantial reduction in core grant funding, delivered that capital programme, and maintained strong levels of external funding. We've ended the year with an underlying surplus, and we have adequate reserves for our purposes. So whilst the medium-term financial outlook remains challenging, we do enter 26-27 in a stable financial position. We have got good financial control. We've got a new financial system that's proving very, very worthwhile. We've got strong reserve balances and a clear focus on income generation and external funding. So again, I just want to thank colleagues across the authority. They've done a sterling effort. Their contribution to those results is really, really hard to kind of put down on paper, really. Particularly given the scale of change and investment we've delivered during the year. So, Chair, I commend the recommendations within the report and the appendices to yourselves. I'm happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you so much. Members? Andrew, you had a question. I remembered you said you had.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Obviously, it's been a challenging year in terms of the way the money's coming in. It's a very good report, and it gives us a good picture. It's quite frightening when you look at the 745,000, which is sort of. Did you say that's now been paid? But
no, literally as I've been sat there, I've had a remittance advice from DEFRA, so that is due at the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge amount of money, and it reflects on Francis said. This is no way to run a business. However, businesses do run like this. I've realised a lot of my career I've been running businesses just like that. Battle BT construction, project funding coming in, consultancy, project funding coming in, you win a piece of work. But what that then does, you make sure you manage the cash flow, massively important, and you boost program management and project management skills. And I just wonder if there is something else that we've looked at, because we're obviously using the reserve to balance that cash flow. But when there's a huge amount of money going forward, I'm sure you are doing cash flows going forward, but at project level, the delay in funding can have a massive impact. The white-tailed eagle, we weren't quite sure on the funding, but I just wonder again the need to put in program management approach, driver farms and program underneath their projects, and then you start managing a cash flow on a program management basis, and then that feeds into the annual accounts, because project management, project funding doesn't always sit well with annual accounts, and I know companies have to deal with that. And I just wonder if there's any, you would comment on that. Can you see a way of merging that in a different way? Are you comfortable with what's happening? Do you think there needs to be a different way of doing some things and managing things? Because it clearly is a big area, isn't it?
I mean,
is that clear? I'm not sure.
I think I've kind of got the gist of what you're trying to sort of say here. So in terms of cash flow, I mean, our next paper, the Treasury Management, is another example of that. So you'll see from that we've got around £3.5 million of reserves, cash, that's invested at any one point during the year. So we haven't got unlike some businesses, we haven't got a single focus. We've got a myriad of projects and processes in place, and that's all managed in terms of cash flow. So we are looking across on a monthly basis. What are we doing? When are we going to get our key grant in? When are these projects going to be receiving monies back? When's our salary bill going out? So I would say our cash flow management sits above that and is of prime importance to me, really, because as I said, it impacts on our investment receipts. That said, the current one is quite an anomaly because we have no real control over when DEFRA is going to pay us. We've always had a fairly quarterly based income profile. So that's brought our cash balances down from say 3.5 million down to 1.92 million, which is stopping the alarm bells running. But when our wage bill's around 350,000 a month, it's not a hideous position to be in. So we do, long-winded way to answer your first question. Cash flow management, I'm happy that we run that in a way. Programme management, members will recall the capital budget this year has been pushed into programmes. So rather than trying to manage at a myriad project level, we've pushed it up. So we're managing an overall kind of cash basis for programmes. And that's how I'm doing cash flow management across the board really. Some more operational plus our project feeding in.
If I can add one more thing, I think there's still another level where you have a programme which is trying to deliver a set number of targets, and then those programmes come together with a portfolio. So the programme approach would be drive a farm, trying to achieve those goals, and you manage delivering those outcomes. So yeah, I can see you managing the money as a programme, but actually running, I think, as a programme, joined up goals, project underneath is a slightly different approach. And so when you look at driver, you can build out very quickly how much money you can spend on driver, and you can see the goals. It's slightly different to lumping it together and saying that's a programme. That's just a collection of money, isn't it? But no, I hear what you're saying in terms of the cash flow management. That's reassuring. And you did mention the new accounting system would have a project management element to it. Is that useful, or is it being used? Or?
That has been used this last year, very much so, yes. So we've been able to, as well as have the normal hierarchy of nominal codes for spend, we've also had project codes on there, so that's helped us do our capital accounting for year end. So that's been very worthwhile.
Thank you, Ben. I probably said enough.
Thank you. And you've managed to drive away our young people. Mike.
Well, it's a fairly simple question. I'm sure you can answer it, of course. So, in order to retain our financial integrity going forward, there's an increasing reliance on external funding and income generation. How is that reflected, and how does it inform our corporate plan and priorities? So it's a simple question at that level, but they do need to very clearly cross-reference each other and inform each other, don't they?
They do, and that's often why our corporate plan goes hand in hand with our medium-term financial planning. Because that is not just core operational staff, that is all the projects intermixed as well. In terms of, sorry.
Well, which suggests that there should be a focus, I'm sure there is a focus on attracting external funding and income generation.
Yeah.
You know, we're fully aware of that, aren't we? So
yes, I mean that was a cross-cutting priority last year, as Sarah delivered this morning. That was a cross-cutting.
It was
one of our 6 key priorities of the corporate plan for 25-26 was income generation.
But it just brings me back to the point I made about capacity. So we need to be very aware about what, because of the way we've got to go and get external funding, we've got to be very careful about what we're asking everybody to do. You know, there's loads of things as members we'd like to do, but I just can't see how we have the capacity to do them. And you know, that always comes down to questions about the duty, really. We've got to be very careful about what we're doing. Did you want to say something?
Can I just add to what Ben said? It's a really good question, Mike, because I think, reflecting back, as we are developing our corporate plan, we're also developing our budget. So what we do as a leadership team is literally go through kind of line by line and allocate the money to it, and then it gets kind of clumped together and it comes back to you as this is the programme for this. So we have gone right through it with a tooth comb saying this is going to cost 200,000, this is going to cost 1,000, whatever, and we then allocate. So there's a really clear join up between the corporate plan and the budget.
Of course. Okay.
Everything else. I can't see any more hands. Is there any more questions? No, Robin. Sorry, Robin. Sat right next to me. Oh, sorry.
have to commend Ben actually for the report and the completeness of it. I think it explains an awful lot of the corporate plan when you read the two side by side. He's obviously developed quite a phenomenal ability to play at being the juggler whilst looking at a series of spreadsheets and with the crystal ball in the corner of the desk and stumbling from one funding opportunity to the next as somebody actually says we can have some money. I think that looks like that's the situation we've been in. It's not looking like it's going to change in the very near future, is it, Ben? Unfortunately. It doesn't help a great deal with the long-term planning that our corporate plan should be presented. There's an awful lot of optimism in there, and there has to be, I'm afraid. I would just like to move the recommendation, actually, Ben, and thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Bill, and then Mark.
Yes, Ben, mine's just simple. What's our policy on paying invoices, paying suppliers? Does it vary from depending what it is, or do you have a sort of specified 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever?
For the last 15 years, we try and pay ASAP. So as soon as we've got a invoice in, it's been approved, they'll be on the payment run.
Right.
So we monitor how many the time spent from receipt of invoice to payments. But our aim is I think it's a small business concord out from about 2010, 2011. So we aim to pay ASAP really.
Okay.
So we have a weekly payments run.
Thank you. And Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Mine was, one thing that jumped out of the page for me was, I think when you talk about the national park centres and there being a net overspend, and it's £31,000, not in the scheme of things, it's not the biggest number in the world, but for me the bit in your report that stuck out was the fact that visitors were down 12%, and I'm thinking, I'm assuming that's not going to get any better this year, and it highlights another problem we got in the foregoing years, and we've also been talking about the capital spend that we've had, with regard to in other places, and actually, but then when it comes to the visitor economy, bear in mind I do sit on visit Exmark stuff, but talk about the visitor economy, and actually if we're not investing in that, then actually that 12% isn't just going to get magically better overnight. I mean, a lot of us in the industry always hope it does, but with all the external factors, there's some things that are beyond our control and then some things that are in our control. And I just think we're very fortunate with who we have at the park with Dan and everything else, for what we do and the value and the bang for our bucks we probably get, and we probably punch way above our weight in that respect compared to other places, dare I say it. So it's just whether, if that 12% gets exacerbated to next year and then suddenly get 10% down on the 12% down you were down this year, you suddenly end up with a vicious catch-22, and as Andy was saying, it's all about cash flow, isn't it? And as a park we might be more resilient to that, but there's been an awful lot of people out there who aren't so resilient, so it's how we sort of throw our weight more behind what the LLEP, that's the word, isn't it? That partnership, which I think North Devon's involved in, is it the county or the district? I think it's district, because you used to have a tourism officer in North Devon? Or you've got someone who's more specific. I think you have more than we have in Somerset anyway, let's put it that way, who's more involved.
I think it started longer in Devon.
Yeah, I think so. It's just making sure that we still politically throw our weight behind that visitor economy, because that 12% across the park ends up having a vicious catch-22 cash flow issue, and could cost us further in the future.
I think we're all aware about the lack of disposable income in everybody's household. Where that's shrunk, we've all got less money to spend on doing things that we quite like to do. Oh, Bill, you want to come back?
Can I second the motion, please?
Oh, thank you, that's very helpful. Gosh, you're all with all today. Is there any more questions before we go to the vote? No, thank you very much. All those in favour? Nick's joking, I don't. Anybody against? And nobody abstaining. Brilliant, thank you. Ben, don't move. The annual treasury management report.
Thank you, Chairman, again. So this is the authority's annual treasury management report. It provides assurance that treasury activities during the financial year 25-26 were undertaken in accordance with the approved treasury management strategy SIP requirements and all our approved prudential limits. This report is primarily for governance purposes and assurance rather than seeking any policy change. The key headline really is that Treasury management activity remains prudent, low risk and fully compliant throughout the year. We had no breaches of prudential limits and the authorities continue to operate without any borrowing, any loans or of that. We remain debt-free through 25-26 and essentially no requirement to take short-term and long-term borrowing. This reflects the authority's overall financial position and it's our prudent approach to managing capital expenditure as well. So turn to our deposits or investments. The authority's approach continues to prioritise security and liquidity ahead of maximising returns. Our surplus cash continues to be operated and managed through Somerset Council under existing service level agreements. This provides a really secure and cost-effective arrangement and it allows us access to professional treasury management expertise in Upper County. So key figures really for you. So during 25-26 our average cash balances were approximately 3.87 million. Year end our cash balances were 3.57 million. Our gross investment income for the year was £160,000, give or take a few. And the average investment return achieved was about 4.15%, so it's slightly above the average Bank of England base rate for the year. So I consider this represents a good return. It's within a cautious risk framework. Demonstrates the authorities continue to benefit from the higher interest rate environment with that relationship with Somerset Council and maintains a low risk treasury position. So as the report, which is mostly provided by Somerset for our benefit, shows that the wider economic environment remained uncertain during the year. Remained uncertain during, I'm talking about 25-26. Changing inflation expectations, interest rate movements, and these international events, which kind of create a heck of a lot of volatility in the financial markets. However, reassuring to know that these factors did not materially affect the authority's treasury strategy. That still remains focused on protecting public funds, because we are, ensures liquidity for us, and that was maintained at all times. So it's in a real light and quick summary. Treasury activities were conducted safely and prudently. We remain debt-free. All our prudential indicators and treasury limits were complied with. Cash balances remained strong and liquid, and investment returns were favourable, whilst maintaining a low-risk approach. So I would just essentially say it's a positive assurance report, and I don't really have anything else to say, so I present to the Chair and members of the questions.
I've got a question. Don't normally have a question. Appendix A. Who is Sonia? Sonia features heavily. I thought Sonia. I know who Sonia is. Poor Ben's thinking I don't know either.
Well, I did, but I've got a mental blank, so I'm...
That's all right, I'll ask
so it's the Sterling Overnight Index Average.
Oh, well done. That is really good.
Risk-free reference rates for investments.
It was supposed to be amusing.
Should have known that, but yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to catch you out. I thought
No,
you
that's
should
fine.
have straight out before the time. Right, Stephen, your hand was up so promptly.
Simply, Madam Chairman, to, as ever, compliment the excellence of the report, the prudent nature of our Treasury management, and to move that we, in line with the recommendation, note the Treasury management performance and the other items noted in that recommendation.
Thank you so much. That's accepted. Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Ben, I'd just like to echo what Stephen said. It's excellently put together, and I do acknowledge that Somerset Council do act as the umbrella authority, if you like, in terms of the investment angle. But I just wonder, and the Treasury Management advisors Arlene Close are incredibly reputable and do a great job for Somerset, as they do the park, no doubt. But do we get a place at the table when you have regular reviews with Arlene Close? Are you allowed a place at the table, or does Somerset Council sort of overhaul or overrule you and make your decisions for you? Thank you, Chair.
It's not a place I've ever requested, in honesty. I'm quite satisfied through my discussions with the team at County. They're lending on our behalf. I mean, our investment in terms of the overall Somerset investment is very minuscule, really. We're looking at 3.5 million on a probably must be approaching 1 billion with the pension fund assets as well. So it's not a place I've ever requested. I'm sure if I did go to the team and say, can we get that's understanding? Firstly, I'm not qualified to be able to understand really the full risk and weighting of that, and that's why we buy in the service. So it's not really answer your question, but
no, I understand. Yeah. I know it would be perhaps a drop in the ocean, but it's just good to know if you wanted to get there, you could attend.
I mean, I have regular meetings with the team at County, and it's been very productive for us.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I don't think any of us desperately want to go to that meeting. Mike?
All duly noted, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you very much. There are no other hands. All those in favour? And that's unanimous, including Nick. Thank you. So moving on, it's the, I hate doing this, it's so embarrassing, isn't it? Item 10, members allowed. And this is also, Ben, but I don't think there's much to say really, is there?
No, it's pretty straightforward annual report. It fulfils the authority's statutory obligations, publishing amounts paid to members under the approved members allowance scheme. So it doesn't seek to make any changes in the scheme itself, which we discussed recently. There are no financial risk, quality of climate implications arising from it, really.
I'm just going to say, and I have said this before, I mean, obviously we're going to look at ourselves, so I looked at myself and I thought, other meetings and training events attended, 12. I've done that in the last month. So that's clearly not right. There is something, we're not recording it, probably because I'm not doing something.
Because you're not recording your mileage?
But you don't always pay mileage, do you?
No, exactly, but that's how
Do you see what I mean? It's out of kilter. It doesn't work, does it? Yeah, it just doesn't work. So we probably need to remove that column because it makes no sense. And so I've done that in the last month easily.
Right. We'll certainly review that.
John?
As you say, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'd like to move that we note it, but I'd also like to point out that I think we get overpaid. Do we overpay ourselves?
You don't have to take it.
Steve?
In seconding it, could I just draw attention to the fact that there has been a decrease in the allowances and reimbursements paid as per 2.2 in the report, which is worth noting.
Yeah, we did do that, yeah. Thank you. So we've got a proposed sector. Oh, Francis.
And just to reiterate, we don't have to claim our mileage allowance. We don't have to claim our allowance.
No. No, it's up to you members. Any other hands? No? All those in favour? Unanimous, including Nick. Nobody against, nobody abstaining. Then members' reports, and I haven't been notified of anything. Has anybody been to do anything thrilling or not thrilling, like going to that meeting in Somerset Council or something? No? Thank you. We're going to have, it's got here, comfort break.